So this session is called Math Shifts, and we are going to talk about what Common Core looks like in the elementary math classroom. So I want to start off by talking about the 8 mathematical practices, and these are in your packet on page 9. In your packet, they're organized a little bit more graphically, conceptually, up here, sequential in order. I want to highlight a couple of them. The reason I chose to start with the 8 mathematical practices is because these are really one of the hallmarks of Common Core math. And the great thing about the practices is that they span K-12. So from kindergarten up to 12th grade, no matter what level of math your child is working on, these are the strategies that we're using to encourage your students to think like a mathematician, to really engage in that conceptual reasoning. So I'll talk about a couple of them. Number 1, making sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Perseverance has been really a great skill for students working with Common Core math problems. The problem you're going to see tonight is an example of Common Core math, and it's not that instant gratification that we're used to. I remember being in school and doing math problems, and I was able to do a lot of problems and do them quickly, and I kind of knew that I was getting them right. The problems you're going to see now have more levels, more complex steps, and students really have to persevere and stick with it as they work through. I'll skip to number 3, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. So we want students to be able to explain how they came to their answers. In the past, you'd have a classroom full of kids and somebody would raise their hand and say the answer is 7. And as the teacher, you would say yes, and you would move on, or no, and you would pick someone else. Now the question is, how did you get 7? The students need to be able to explain their steps, as well as listen to somebody else's explanation of steps. See if their reasoning is logical, if they use the same strategy or a different strategy. And another practice worth highlighting is number 6, attend to precision. We still expect our students to get the math correct and get it correct quickly. So we're asking them to persevere through difficult problems, explain their reasoning, engage in mathematical conversations, and be very precise in their calculations. So what you just saw, the mathematical practices, represent kind of the conceptual side, the habits of mind of Common Core math. Here we have what we call the Common Core math shifts. These are the changes on the instructional end. These are the things that look different in the classroom. So the first math shift is focus. Focus strongly where the standards focus. Historically in this country, math education has been what we call a mile wide and an inch deep. Have you heard that before? So we cover every topic every year. And then what happens over the summer? You go on vacation, you forget some. So you come back and review and you cover every topic every year. And in our drive to get through the text and cover every topic, we're only going about this deep. Now with Common Core, there are fewer standards, so it's not a mile wide anymore. And we're able to learn them at a deeper level. It's not an inch deep, it's a whole lot deeper. So over the summer, if we forget a little bit, we still have a good base. And that's where the next shift comes in, coherence. So we want to connect learning in and across grade levels. Instead of teach everything, review, teach everything again, we want to teach a little bit, teach it well, learn it well, apply it, and then build on that learning in the next year. And the third shift is rigor. And when we hear the word rigor, we think, oh, it's going to be more difficult. Yes, it's going to be more difficult. But not just across the board. This isn't just pick a difficult problem and give it to your kid and see what happens. It's focused rigor. The first area of rigor is conceptual understanding. So this is that big picture idea. If your children are learning fractions, it's not enough to know numerator and know denominator. You want them to conceptually understand what is a fraction. What is a part to a whole relationship? What does it mean if I ate 1/3 of the pizza and somebody else ate 1/2 of the pizza and then somebody back there ate the whole pizza? What's the difference? Procedural skill and fluency. Fluency is what we used to call math facts. Have you heard that before? Students need to know their math facts. So things like times tables. When you see the kinds of problems our students are doing with Common Core, they don't have time to count their times tables on their fingers. Have you seen this? It's the what's 6 times 8? I forget. Next thing you know, their socks are off, they're counting their toes. We don't have time to get caught up in the computation. So we want students who are fluent with their computation so that they can tackle the conceptual understanding and apply their knowledge in new settings. So application is the third area of rigor. With Common Core, all 3 areas of rigor are applied with equal intensity and equal importance.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind now turning to page 10 in your packet, you're going to have the opportunity to experience one of the problems as one of your students would. This is actually a 4th grade math problem. It's a release question from the Smarter Balance test. So the problem states, Miss McRary wants to make a rabbit pen in a section of her lawn. Her plan for the rabbit pen includes the following. It will be in the shape of a rectangle. It will take 24 feet of fence material to make. Each side will be longer than 1 foot, and the length and width will measure whole feet. So the direction is, use the grid to draw 3 different rectangles that can each represent Miss McRary's rabbit pen. Be sure to use all 24 feet of fence material for each pen. So you'll have a minute or 2 now to go ahead and try that out. Okay.
We have some more seats here on the side.
Okay, due to time, we're going to go ahead and just point out a few things here. One of the things so example answer would be 10 feet by 2 feet. Another one would be 4 feet by 8 feet. Another example is 6 feet by 6 feet. And a key point here is that these are possible answers, and that's really one thing we're trying to teach the kids, that there's not always just one answer to a math problem. And in this case, we might ask them, maybe there's more than 3, so we can go deeper in our understanding. Another thing we wanted to point out here with the last example, 6 feet by 6 feet, this is actually a square. But the children would really need to have a good understanding of math, even though they're asking for a rectangle, that all squares are rectangles, though not necessarily all rectangles are squares. Another key point here is that this is part A of a problem, so which means there's part B. And when we talked about that perseverance, that the student really is going to have to persevere. Maybe they're not going to have as many problems, but they're going to go deeper and with their understanding of the problem. So in this case, the other thing in this case, we have length and width, but this child would also be asked to find area. So again, really, you're going to need to have a full understanding of that math problem. For part B, Miss McRary wants her rabbit to have more than 60 square feet of ground area inside the pen. She finds that if she uses the side of her house as one of the sides of the rabbit pen, she can make the rabbit pen larger. So the student would be asked to draw another rectangular rabbit pen. Use all 24 feet of fencing for 3 sides of the pen. Use one side of the house for the other side of the pen, and make sure the ground area inside the pen is greater than 60 square feet. So here, it's really applying math. So we understand that if you're using the side of the house and you're using the same amount of fencing, you're going to have more area for that rabbit. So it's a real good example of using math to solve problems that are real life.
So in a teaching situation, we want to respect a student's method of solving the problem and then challenge him or her to solve it another way. So with the rabbit pen example, in the classroom, we might not say that you have to find 3 pens that work right away. We might say, find 1, see how many you can find. With the rectangle and the square, we might say, oh, I see you made 3 rectangles, great job. Is there another shape you can use that fits the requirements of the problem? When we're building a fence with the side of the house as one side, some students might find that really quickly. And we might ask them, great, now what's the optimal sized fence? How can you get the most area for the amount of fence you have? And challenge them to extend it that way as well. So how are things going to look a little bit different? Before Common Core, we had many problems all solved the same way. 1 through 20, we're going to do multi-digit multiplication to solve all these problems. And it would usually tell you what strategy to use at the top. Now, we're seeing more problems like the rabbit problem, where the problem is solved multiple ways or using multiple strategies, and the students have to identify the strategy they want to use. Before Common Core, we emphasize the correct answer. With Common Core, not only do we expect our students to get the correct answer, we expect them to be able to explain the why and explain the how.
Thank you for being here today. What we're going to do is we're going to focus in on the Smarter Balance. The Smarter Balance is the new assessment that is going to take the place of the CST. And this is a new year for all of us to practice and try this out. So we want to be able to give you the website, give you an opportunity to look at the questions. It's kind of a preview of what your students, of what your children will be doing. And so the teachers will be doing the practice tests with the students first. And then once we return from spring break, they will be doing a field test with the students. And this year we're fortunate that we will not be given data back, so the students will not be graded. Okay, so no parents, no information will be given back to the school district or to the students. We're doing this primarily just to familiarize ourselves with the program. It's a learning year for everyone. But we're really excited and we want to be able to show you what it looks like, okay? So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that you're on this web page, and we're going to ask you to click on Student Interface Practice and Training Test. So if you can please click on that green button.
So you're going to just scroll down a little bit.
Just scroll down, you should all be on that page.
And there's...
Okay, once you click on that, you're going to be on the sign-in page. The sign-in page defaults to guest. When the kids actually do this, they will be putting in their first and their last name and their state ID number. So go ahead and click on sign in. You just need to click once. And so what it does is it verifies the information. So again, once your child does this, it'll verify their specific information. The test will be given to all students in grades 3 through 8, and then also again in grade 11. Okay, so feel free to select any grade you'd like. If you have a child that's in kinder, first or second grade, I would suggest selecting third grade just so you can see what it's going to be like for them. And when you do that, it'll take you to the actual test. The students will be taking one test that's about 22 questions. It has multiple choice questions. It has fill in the blanks. It has free response. And they will be given, the total time for both tests is approximately 3.5 hours long, but that's broken up and determined by site and as needed by the student, okay? And they also are given a performance task. What the performance task is they're doing an activity with the teacher and other students in the classroom, and then for the performance task, they write about the activity that's done. So for today, we're going to look at our first two options. So you have a choice here. You can either do math or language arts, so feel free to pick either one. Okay, and so once you select that, you have some settings that you can pick from. The kids are going to be able to pick just different settings to help them out while they're taking the test. What's really nice about the program is that you can change the background. So if sometimes that traditional white background with the black font can be bothersome to the eyes, especially when we're reading, we can change it so that it's a nice rose background with the black font or a blue background with yellow font. And so that's really beneficial depending on each individual child's needs. So go ahead and select any settings you'd like and then click select. Okay, and it'll just verify exactly what you said and then click yes, start my test. This is a new little function. And so what it is, it's a sound check. So we really need you to just click on the little microphone button. And it's just verifying that there is sound coming out. The kids will be using headphones and a volume adjust control so that they can hear. When they're actually taking the field test, all of their computer options will no longer be activated because they're using a secure browser. Yeah.
During the test, will the children be given a piece of paper and a pencil, or are they expected to do all the math in their head?
No, they will. Thank you for asking that. They will be given a piece of paper and a pencil. Yeah,
So they're able to do their scratch work.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And they also get a notepad on the computer as well that they can use. So they have multiple options, which is nice. Okay, so once you've done the sound check, click on yes. And then it gives just some instructions and help. This is accessible while they're taking the test as well. So they don't have to memorize this. Okay, so we're going to click on begin test now. Okay, and what we went into is the language arts. And one thing we want you to notice here is that there is a split screen. And so we really want to work on with the kids on how to use the mouse, how to scroll up and down. They can use that little key to expand. Okay, and look at this. And then here you have the questions where they'd have to click inside the box and then type in their answers. And then you can see there's multiple questions. So if we scroll down here, it's really important that the kids see all of the questions that are available on that page, because sometimes there's more than one question on one page. Okay? So we're going to give you time now to answer the questions on your own. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand.
I couldn't. Okay, because I was trying to, I was watching what they were picking and it didn't seem to matter.
So this would replace a CST?
Yes.
Third to the fifth for this?
3rd through 8th grade, and then again in 11th for this year and from now on.
And you say this year doesn't count because it's a practice?
Exactly, yeah. This year we will not be getting any results back from the state.
So it's going to start next year?
It will start next year. From what we're told, I believe it will.
Yeah, officially, where the actual scores, where we get scores, we were told that it'll start next year. The 5th grade is still taking
Yeah.
the science CST, but they're going to be taking the smarter balanced language arts and math just as a practice to help them get used to the whole test itself.
So by now you've been to a couple of sessions and heard what's new with Common Core and what the new shifts are, the new changes with Common Core. We're here to talk to you about 2 programs, Thinking Maps, which should probably look familiar to you with your students' work, and Right from the Beginning, a writing program aligned with this, that are already in place and have been in place for many years. So we do have a lot of wonderful programs and a lot of materials already in place with Common Core, so we're not throwing everything out and starting over. We already have a lot of these in place. So we're going to talk about these 2 programs and how they align with Common Core. So first, Carolyn will talk about the maps. I will talk to you about how they align, and then we'll transition to the writing component piece. And you heard in the ELA shifts presentation how writing is very important in Common Core, to write in every single subject area. So these 2 programs will help our students to be able to do that successfully.
So this is page 4 in your handout if you don't want to have to read the blurry projection up here. These are the thinking maps that we've been using. Students and teachers are very familiar with them. We've been using them for like 10 years, so we know them. The idea behind thinking maps is that there are 8, that they did a bunch of brain-based research. And the idea was they wanted to identify key thinking skills that students needed in order to be successful. When they did that research, they identified 8 key thinking skills listed down the middle of your page there that were important for kids to be successful. To support students with those thinking skills, they wanted to associate a visual pattern with them. We know that more than half of the nerves that fire to our brain are sending visual signals. We're very visual thinkers. So instead of having comparing and contrasting being some abstract idea that just kind of exists up in our head, we wanted to have a visual pattern to associate with that. So every time a student is asked to compare and contrast, they would have their teacher would help them learn to use a double bubble map to do that. Whenever the teacher is doing sequencing in class, the teacher would model by using a flow map and teach the kids how they could use a flow map too to help them with that. We use all of these thinking skills starting in kindergarten. Kindergartners describe, they sequence, they compare and contrast. So we use thinking maps starting in kindergarten. We use thinking maps all the way up through 5th grade. And now our middle schools are using thinking maps also. The high school is aware of thinking maps. They don't explicitly teach thinking maps the same way we do at the elementary school, but the high school teachers know what thinking maps are. They're aware of the fact that the students are coming up to them with thinking maps as a tool for their learning. We use these thinking skills in all of the different subject areas. We classify in science, in math, in social studies, in reading, in writing. So we use the thinking maps in all of the different subject areas. And that's where the thinking maps become really powerful, because starting in kindergarten, all throughout their school day, these are tools that students can use to help them with any of the thinking that they run into. So Debbie is going to talk some about how these thinking maps that we've been using for years tie in and support the new Common Core state standards really well.
Okay, so on your paper that you have right there in your packet, it does have out to the side some examples of the Common Core standards that align specifically with each map and questions that are correlated with it. I apologize, it's kind of blurry, but this is the best we can do with this. I'm not going to read these to you because you have these to take home, but I did highlight a few standards. And like I said, this doesn't project as wide as we had hoped, so I'm going to have to kind of do a little typewriter type reading to you here. So in grade 3, one of the ELA standards says to compare and contrast the most important points and key details presented in 2 texts on the same topic. So when a teacher or the students see the words compare and contrast, it triggers in their head, oh, I know. One way I could organize my thinking, compare and contrast, is to use a double bubble map. So here's an example of a 3rd grade student who did just that. Where the 2 books are Balto and Stone Fox. They're both about dogs, so similar theme, similar text. And in the center, they wrote all the ways that they're the same, the comparisons, and in the red to the side is how they're different, the contrast. So now instead of having all these ideals just in my head swimming around, I have a visual way to organize them on paper. And now I'm ready to answer questions my teacher might ask me. I'm ready to maybe write a summary or some sort of writing prompt to go along with this, because now it's completely organized. In grade 7, one of their standards says to analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, including how the major sections contribute to the whole and the development of the idea. So when I see the words analyze, sections or parts, and the word whole, that triggers parts to a whole, which would be a brace map. So this is a way teachers can even use thinking maps to organize their instruction. So this was a brace map done on genres of text. So it goes from the general to the more specific. Then here we're going vertically. We have literature, we have informational text, horizontally. We have fictional, poetry, drama, the different types, and we get a little more specific with the examples. So it goes from the general to the more specific here in a brace map, parts to a whole, and this would be the whole. In 11th grade, one of their standards says to cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly. So we chose one map. You could do this with every single map, but we chose a basic one that we're familiar with seeing as the bubble map. And the way you would do that is just to write out to the side the evidence the students found from the text, whether it's a word, a phrase, if it's a dialogue, and the page number as well. And here's an example from the book The Crucible, when there was a character analysis of Elizabeth. So the student wrote out to the side words about Elizabeth to describe her. But in addition, this is a girl, she had to put down how she came to that conclusion. And this teacher gave the directions that it could only be from dialogue, so made it a little more challenging as an older student. So she wrote down all the specific quotes and the page number that led her to believe that Elizabeth was suspicious. And now her thinking is organized as well, and she cited her evidence from the text as well. Okay, so you're going to get the chance to do a thinking map yourselves. So if you turn to page 5 in your packet, there's a nice white space at the bottom. If you need a pen or a pencil, we have extras. So we're going to pick a topic that's easy for us all, something familiar, and it's going to be Arcadia. We'll be doing a bubble map as well, otherwise known as a describing map. So in the center of your paper, if you'll please write the word Arcadia, then circle it. And then we're going to give you like 30 seconds to write 2, 3, maybe more descriptors to describe Arcadia. However, here's the trick. With a bubble map, they may only be adjectives. That's the rule with the bubble map. So for instance, I could say Arcadia is beautiful, Arcadia is mountainous, but I cannot say has good restaurants because that's not an adjective. So think about just adjectives to describe Arcadia. You can work with the people sitting next to you. We let our students collaborate. You can as well. We'll have people share out some of your ideas. So take like 30 seconds and see if you can come up with adjectives that describe Arcadia. So somebody put safe. We've heard safe a lot in all the sessions we've had so far. Convenient, yes. Anything else? Anybody else want to share? We've heard expensive. Well, that's come out here. Okay. Yes. We've also heard safe, which is nice to hear, and clean. So was it more difficult to think only in terms of adjectives? Because that's kind of the point, that these maps might look very simple in their design and how they're laid out, but the thinking that goes into the maps is not so simple. And as our students get older, we combine maps and put maps within maps to continue to challenge them. So Carolyn's going to show you how we can take a basic thinking map and turn it into a piece of writing across the curriculum.
So we've been using the thinking maps for about 10 years, and just in the last few years, we've started using the Right from the Beginning program also. The Right from the Beginning program is a writing program that was developed by the same people who developed thinking maps. And it basically uses thinking maps to help students brainstorm and organize for writing. So I'll kind of take you through the process real quick. If a student was given this prompt, tell about where you live, describe your city, and tell about some of the kinds of activities there are to do there, we're hoping that immediately a student would recognize that they're being asked to describe, and then they'll think, describe piece of cake. I've been using bubble maps to describe since I was in kindergarten, and so they could go ahead and use these descriptive words. Hopefully they'll also recognize that they're being asked to talk about different kinds of activities, and that could be done using a tree map, which is another very commonly used map. The idea of a tree map is we have Arcadia, we have the different types of activities, and then examples of those different types of activities down here. So if they can do those maps, then they've done the thinking that they need to do for their writing. But they need to get organized before they write. And the Right from the Beginning program gives us an organizational structure to do that. The idea is that students will write an introductory sentence to just introduce what they're talking about. And then depending on what the prompt is, they'll choose a good order of information to share. Here the student chose a couple of good descriptors from their bubble map since they were asked to describe, and a couple of their favorite activities from their tree map since they were asked to talk about types of activities. They brainstorm details about all of those things and have a closing sentence here. So we really get them to become comfortable with that structure. I want to show you a couple of student samples real quick. This is from a first grader from earlier this year who was asked to write about what do you do at school, what's your routine. So they made a circle map about school, came up with read, math, test, friend, play. This is what they do at school. They chose some of their best ideas, circled them, and then got those ideas organized for writing. They chose a good order to put their favorite ideas in. And in first grade, we're not asking them to write introductory and concluding sentences, but this student was ready to start using some transition words. Once they've done that thinking and organizing, it's easy to write the sentences. First I do math, next I read with my friend, last we do a test. As they continue on through first grade and through all the different grade levels, we keep adding on and adding on and adding on until we get to the kind of work that a fourth or fifth grader could do. This fourth grader was asked to write about, do you think students should have homework every night? Something's wrong with this student because he said yes. Without the teacher telling him what to do at all, he said, okay, first I've just got to get some ideas of why. He made a circle map, came up with a bunch of ideas why. No one told him to, but he, on his own, used this organizational structure to get ready to write. Came up with, because he's a fourth grader, a couple of sentences to introduce the topic, took some of his best ideas from the circle map, had details about it, came up with transition words, and then wrote his concluding sentences. From there, after he did the thinking and organizing, it was easy for him to turn that into a multiple paragraph piece of writing. So we went from 3 sentences up to paragraphs and paragraphs.
All right, so my name is Jennifer Prince. I'm the lead teacher on special assignment here in Arcadia. So my job is this year outside the classroom. I work with teachers from transitional kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, helping them to understand and implement the Common Core. And I also work with parents such as yourselves to help you understand what we're doing in Arcadia to meet the Common Core state standards.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Sandy Birch. I'm the teacher on special assignment right here at Longley Way. Also during the summer, I'm the principal for the Arcadia Ed Foundation, so I've got to give a plug. We just finished the catalog. We're offering some amazing classes this summer. You'll be receiving the catalog probably around March, so please consider signing your children up.
Okay, so what we are going to talk to you about is, this is called close reading. It is a strategy, not a standard. So this is a strategy we would use in the classroom to help your students meet the standard of being able to read closely read complex text at their grade level. So this is something that we're going to do in school. We would not expect you to do this at home. This is for text at your students' instructional level. So we're going to give them complex, difficult text. You heard about complex text in your English shifts. At home, we would ask you, just let them enjoy their reading time. Have something that's not too tough, that's fun for them, and don't torture them with close reading. Let us do that here at school. And we'll do that a couple times a month here in elementary. It'll get more so in middle school and even more in high school. And the reason we do this is what Common Core is asking is they built, what do our kids need to be able to do for college and career? And then they built backwards. So if they need this when they graduate, what do they need to do in 12th grade? 11th, 10th, all the way through kindergarten. And I know you may be looking at me going, my kid is 7. Aren't you getting ahead of yourself? Well, if we wait until high school and we just throw them in, you've missed all these learning opportunities. It's really difficult. My son is a 9th grader, not here in Arcadia, but he is a 9th grader, and in class they're reading of Mice and Men, but at home their teacher handed him Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and said, read this and in 2 weeks have it read, and I need a written thesis paper on the message Shakespeare was trying to send to the reader.
Yeah, one of our parents at another meeting has a 10th grader, and she said that that happened for her child too. So it's that whole idea of they've got to be able to read something independently, read it closely, analyze it, and not give up.
So if you look at page 6 in your handout, it has kind of a little excerpt of close reading, what it's about. It has some parent tools and strategies. This is also on our Common Core website. So if you go to the AUSD website, over in the left-hand corner, there's a button that says Common Core. All of this is on there, so you can just click on the link as well. So I'll let you read that at home because you don't need me to read that to you. I'm going to ask you, though, now to turn over to page 7. You are going to see a complex text. Don't get scared. We would never consider giving this to your students. This was deliberately chosen knowing you are adults and you're good readers. So we want you to feel a little bit of that struggle that your students might feel when they are doing a close reading in their classroom. So we're going to be quiet for a few minutes, and we're going to ask you to read this text and reread it if you have to. Use some of the tools available to you in these handy little baskets like highlighters, pencils, sticky notes, whatever you need, and see if you can figure out the answer to these 3 questions at the bottom. What's the passage about? When did it make sense to you? And what strategies did you use to figure it out? And then we're going to discuss a little bit. So I'll be quiet for a few minutes. Okay, so you may or may not be done, and that's okay. We're going to ask you this time some bravery, some courage, knowing that Sandy and I are teachers of many years, and it took us more than one time to read it and understand it. And if you look, we have lots of notes and highlighters on there trying to figure it out. So thinking about how you try to figure it out, because of course I'm going to ask you for evidence, what did you think it was about? Any ideas, any guesses?
Getting dressed. Mm-hmm.
Getting dressed. Okay, so what were the clues in there? What words did you find that told you it was getting dressed?
What made it pop? Looking in a mirror.
Okay, and what word told you mirror? Because there's reflectoimagographum, and I can only say it because I've said it like 45 times already in all of these things. But what told you reflectoimagographum was a mirror? How did you know?
It reflects an image.
There you go. So breaking it apart, that's one of the strategies we want our kids to learn, because in a complex text, there are going to be a lot of words that they don't understand. And you can't just give up, and there may not always be somebody there to hand you an answer.
I think that word full length in front of it, that also helped me because I wasn't sure and I saw reflect and image, but then full length kind of made it pop too. But how about Mr. Fong? What do you think?
Yeah, some of the other words that sort of led to the same. We thought it was getting ready for an event. The act of purification, showering.
That was the spot for me. That was where it really popped for me, yeah. Well, even for me, when I read it the first time, I wasn't sure. But then with that first paragraph, the word task is written 4 times. So I thought, okay, it's something in anno meridian and post meridian, so they had to show off, you know, and say AM or PM. But I kind of thought, well, okay, it's something that I'm doing in the morning and at night. It's a task, and it says a lot of people, you know, people do it, human beings do it. And then there were those transition words with the second paragraph. So that also helped me, where I saw it was a sequence of events. But then I was like Mr. Fong, where I saw that active purification. I thought, oh, well, that has to be a shower. But we've had a couple of different thoughts about that heat application. Not everyone thinks it's a hair dryer. So does someone think it could be something else?
Did anyone reread it? Right?
That's what I had to do.
Yeah.
I mean, and then, you know, you take notes different ways. You know, sometimes people highlight, but we're teaching our students how to highlight. Oh my gosh, may I share yours too? Okay. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, just have, I mean, look at, yeah, it's like, yeah, no one's safe. But even, you know, like, thank you. But even with Post-it notes, you know, any type of strategy, the whole trick is we know that we want to teach kids how to look at instructional text. So they're going to be reading something that they're going to be learning from, and we're going to like encourage them, motivate them. The big thing is don't give up. They have to persevere. And you know, if you don't get it the first time, that's okay. Then just read it a second time and really read it with that fine eye where you're looking for those context clues. You're looking for, you know, the Latin and Greek roots. You're just looking for vocabulary that pops out at you. And you know what? They will get it. But again, as Jennifer was saying, we're not doing this every day. We'll just probably be doing this a few times a month in elementary. But Jennifer's middle school, so she'll keeps going.
And what we want you to understand too is this isn't something where, like we did with you guys, where we're going to throw it at you and have you figure it out. With kids, we're going to lead them through. Close reading is a targeted rereading. So we might read it once for the gist of it. With the younger kids, we might even read it out loud. Then we might talk about vocabulary and how to use roots or context clues, like we mentioned with that reflectoimagographum, to understand what words are. Then read it again and see if we can figure it out. That's Sandy's timer telling me to be quiet. Then you can tell how well I listen. It's my timer telling me really, really be quiet, but I'm going to keep going anyway. And then maybe sometimes when you're in a different class, because this could be used for all, just not English too. Maybe in science you talk about a certain scientist's point of view or who's paying for a scientific study, and maybe you look for biases in there. In history, maybe you're looking at an article or a piece of literature and you talk about the historical period, like if it was written during World War II. Maybe it means something different and you can peel those layers away the more you know. So really close reading's targeted reread.
Yeah, and even looking at those multiple perspectives. So, you know, maybe there's one perspective that you're reading, but yet someone else will have another. And I know for me, even that whole thing with the hair dryer and, you know, iron. So we allow it, it's okay.
Yeah, there's lots of different takes, and we're getting the same conclusion regardless of how we got there. There's a lot of ways to get to the same place.